Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Vampire Diaries, as well as the latest episode of Van Helsing. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you don't really want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below, and I have the time slots of when I start talking about each of the respective shows that I'm talking about in this episode, so you can just skip ahead to what you want to. But first of all, I will start off by talking about this week's episode of The Vampire Diaries, which, it begins with basically everyone, Matt coming to tell everyone, is like, yep, Tyler's dead, and they're trying to have a funeral for him and everything. Everyone trying to adjust to this new revelation, especially Steph, because it's like he doesn't know what to do about Damon now. But Caroline's kind of like, at the very least, let's just take this time to mourn Tyler. Let's just use that as a first step. And when they actually go to try and bury him, end up finding like empty graves, and then Damon's there being like, yeah, he's basically gonna kill every one of them, put him in a grave. Then he gets mad, puts vampire blood in Matt's mouth, and just like, it makes him drink vampire blood. It's like, I'll snap his neck and he'll end up becoming one of us. So it's like, stay back. And basically he's like, do you hate me? Okay, good. Essentially trying to force them to hate him, and everyone kind of picks up on, even Caroline. It's like he's trying his best to make us hate him. And interestingly enough, because it turns out that Sybil kind of noticed that too. Like when Damon came to see her, she saw that little spark of guilt, because when he killed Tyler, it did change something within him. It did kind of make him feel something. He did feel sad. He felt bad about it. No matter how much, even if it's like a small speck of like how he still felt it all, and she's like, she can't have that. She needs him to be 100% hers, because if he's feeling guilty about this, because that's why he was trying so hard. It's like, if he really did have his humanity switch on, he would have turned Matt right then and there, just snapped his neck and made it super easy. But it's because he was trying to set a point. It's like, stop trying to save me and just stay the hell out of my way. This way everyone hates me, and I've done what Sybil wants, and that's me cut ties with everyone. Everyone hates me. But the fact of the matter is, Sybil doesn't really buy it, because she knows it's like there's a part of him that's still holding out, that's will never be 100% hers. So she's like, go ahead, you have two choices. The fact is, your humanity switch is right there. It's lifting up. It's about ready to flip back on. But the fact of the matter is, the moment it flips back on, you're going to feel the guilt about everything that you've done. And it's like, because Damon starts even thinking to himself, like, it's too late for him. Like, he's messed up everything. By killing Tyler, he ruined everything. And that basically there's no going back. Because for him, it's still the fear of hell. He knows what's waiting for him. Because even Stefan's trying to tell him, like, turn your switch back on. He's like, what's the point? The fact of the matter is, like, I know where I'm going. Even if I turn on my switch, I'm going to feel like crap. It doesn't change. Even if I feel like crap, it doesn't change the fact is of where I'm going. I'm going straight the hell either way. And then Stefan's like, what's the point of living if you can't feel? And then you have the Damon kind of saying a response like, yeah, I agree. Part of me was kind of thinking in that whole conversation, like, oh, is he going to try to ask Stefan to kill him? It didn't come up, but that was kind of partly in my brain. I mean, really, I completely, I don't know why I thought that, because at the same time, it's like he really previously had said, like, I am trying to extend my life as long as possible to keep hell from being my ultimate destination. It's like, try and keep that as for always possible. To me, something I was thinking about while I was watching the episode, because part of me was like, why is it that Sybil is not working with her sister? It's like, you went out of your way to make sure that Stefan didn't know who your sister's true identity, but still you won't go with her when you had Georgie come bust her out last episode. And part of me thinks it's because she's trying to, like, everything she's doing, she needs Damon, and she's getting whatever she needs. I think what Sybil's trying to do is either kill Cade or kill Celine, or doing both. That the fact of the matter is, whatever object she's collecting is something that she knows will be powerful enough, some magical objects that are powerful enough to stop Cade. And I think the reason why she wants to make Damon, like, remove kind of like that part of him, kind of cut ties with everyone, because that means his heart won't be open to anyone but her. Because, like, I don't think it's like an affection thing. Maybe there is a little bit of something to where she's taking an interest in him, and she wants, because she's never really been loved by someone, maybe she wants to be loved, even if she kind of has to force it. I mean, granted, she's even said herself, like, tapping into his subconscious mind is something, it can only get her so far. Damon has to kind of take it the rest of the way and kind of belong to her fully. And I think that's it, because if he belongs to her fully, that means when she goes after Selene, she'll have muscle to back her up, and Selene won't be able to get to him the way Sybil has gotten to Damon. Like, you know, she won't be able to use her voice and her powers to get to him. And speaking of Selene, like, we saw her in this episode, I mean, still hiding, keeping her identity secret. I mean, granted, that came out, but I'll get to that a little bit later on. But the fact of the matter is, it's like she was like having the kids come together, and it's like, okay, we're going to burn like this toy they got from the fair, and she's like, oh, she gave them her hands, and they kind of siphoned a little bit of her magic, and then she basically had them cast a spell, and it killed the fish. But basically, that was her way of disposing of Georgie's body. I was like, they start closing in. I'm like, when you see stuff burn, I'm like, it's Georgie's body, and you see a little bit, you see a hand. I'm like, yeah, that was her disposing of Georgie, finding a way to dispose of Georgie's body. To me, I'm wondering, was that planned? Was she just trying to get rid of Georgie's body, or was that to actually help Sybil escape? I don't think it was. It just kind of worked out that way because it was like a series of events. The fact is that, because I think the whole point was for Alaric to think Georgie was the Siren's sister or whatever, and maybe that was the case, but it didn't really work because he was kind of like, something's weird, because if Georgie had left, she wouldn't have taken everything. Like, he knew there was something a little hinky about it. He had his assistant who was supposed to be hitting the thing every hour to keep Sybil in check so that she doesn't really get out, which kind of backfired. So to me, I was thinking to myself, was that whole thing a setup, like getting rid of Georgie's body like that as a means of luring, you know, them away so that she'd be able to get to Sybil? But it's like her and Sybil didn't meet up, so I don't think that was on purpose. I think it just happy-go-lucky accident, I guess, because it's just the fact is Lark put out a missing person report for Georgie, and then like his assistant got a call and left, because to him, he kept bringing it up to Lark, are you going to tell me what this whole thing was about? If he knew that, he probably would have made sure to hit it before he left, but you know, he didn't think about it. And now Sybil ended up breaking it out because Damon kind of cracked, he kind of gave her an opening when he cracked the glass earlier in the episode, and she just used her voice to kind of shatter it. And she also has the tuning fork with her too, so it's not like they can use that against her. But part of me thinks, like, I legitimately think she's also arming herself against her sister, because like, yeah, it'll affect her, but at the very least it'll also mean it can affect her sister too, meaning Damon can use that opportunity to go after her. So I mean, that's how I'm thinking about it. But something that did cross my mind during this episode, like, I think my current kind of predictions or just thoughts about what Selene wants with the twins, it just kind of clicked in my head as like the fact that she's like, oh, meet Kate and everything. I'm like, do you think Selene's trying to use the twins as substitutes for her and Sybil? Because as you know, this the tuning fork works on them. So I brought up the fact is that maybe they actually are in the makings of being sirens or whatever. Like, they have the makings to become sirens. With like, all you really need to be a siren, I guess, is really like a telepathic ability, and maybe they have that. I mean, I don't know, maybe they just have the potential, but it seems like that maybe that isn't what it is. Maybe it's just because they're special, and it's like, maybe she did that specific thing because, like, she needed, I guess, to cast a spell and kind of burn the body, I guess she needed the twins to use magic, so just sight, because it seemed like it could have been something she could, because the thing is, why do it like that? She could have easily burned her body herself. It could be 1 or 2 days, like I said, using them as a substitute so that her and Sybil can be free from Cade's control or servitude, because it's like, hey, we brought you 2 people, give them enough time, they will be a good enough substitute. So maybe that's what that's about. Or it could be so that she stains their hearts, so that actually, because now they've kind of burn Georgie's dead body, so maybe that casts a little bit of a dark spot on our hearts, meaning they could be a good meal for Kate or something. If maybe it's like, I give you these 2 delicious meals, or 2 delicious potential meals, and you let me and my sister go, because it's like, the only reason why she serves Cade now is all for the sole purpose of she wanted to save Sybil, even though Sybil wanted to kind of die to get away from her. So that's currently where my mindset is at, that like on that whole thing. So whether there's validity to that or not, we'll just kind of have to wait to see. But also, I had previously brought up, I was like, oh, like the whole Sybil situation in Virginia, because I brought that up before. It's like, oh, maybe the reason why Virginia did what she did, biting off her tongue, going after the girls and stuff, was cover for the fact that it's like, oh yeah, like it was covered to be like, you know, to get Virginia out of the way, you know, because it's like she wanted the girls kind of getting Virginia out of the way. That's why she had her bite off her tongue, is because she didn't want her spilling any secrets. Because apparently she gave Tyler some files. Basically, apparently, like it was their grandfather or their uncle or something like that, Virginia's uncle or grandfather, who released the Celine back in 1983. Because I brought that up before. It's like, oh, the siren's been out this entire time. But that's what that was all about. Virginia probably tracked her down because she knew Celine's real identity, and she goes after her, and that's what ended up happening. And it's like, she used it as an excuse to kind of get rid of Virginia, and ended up making her bite her tongue so that it's like she wouldn't be. So to them, it seems like Virginia was just crazy and just lost her mind or something like that. I was thinking like, oh, maybe she targeted a kid specifically. Like she knew Celine was the siren. I was a little bit about to say Banshee was the siren, and that she was going after the kids because of that old connection. But it seems like it was legitimate to make them think that Virginia was crazy. So she probably came after Celine, but Celine kind of took her out of the equation. But nevertheless, Tyler had been looking for Celine, and then it passed all those notes down to Matt, and that's how Caroline and Alaric and everyone ended up finding out, because he happens to look at the pictures of the girls with her, and it's like, no, that's Celine. She's the other siren. So it's just kind of interesting that's how that all worked out, because it's like it was kind of like a pass down. Like Virginia thought that in case anything ever happened to her, someone had to continue her work to track down the other siren. So, like I said, I still feel, because we really haven't gotten Celine's side of things. I guess the reason it makes you wonder, has Celine been trying her best this entire time to get Sybil out? But the fact of the matter is, Celine didn't pop up until this season. That's when she first became the nanny and whatnot. So maybe she ended up hearing reports about all the, dead bodies, all the bad people that's gone missing and everything. And maybe she pieced it together and was like, okay, she knew. Maybe she ended up finding out some information about Damon and Enzo, and she was kind of like, okay, like my sister's out. And she found out about the connection to Alaric, and that's why she got so close to them. Or maybe the kids played a part in that decision too. It seems like it might all really be connected. Another part in this episode was Bonnie trying to get to Enzo. At first, it didn't seem like it was going to work, but after going through very drastic measures, she ended up burning the cabin around them, and it's like, I won't abandon you. Because basically, she had a conversation with Caroline being like, okay, so how did you get your humanity back? And it's basically, she had to face what she was most afraid of. And in Enzo's case, it was being alone. And she was practically, it's like, either you turn your humanity back on, or we just both burn. But seeing Bonnie like that, willing to stick by him, it forced him to kind of flip his switch back on. Part of my brain was, being the pessimist and be like, oh, maybe he's faking this. Like, nah, he's back. So that was good. So there is some victory in all this. I mean, granted, Stefan did try to put Damon out of the equation by taking him out of play, but because Sybil got away, she ended up waking Damon up, and he's like, I'm 100% yours. Even then, he still doesn't want to be a part of this, because it's like, I mean, he's pissed at what Stefan but I'm sure there's a part of his brain that is like, he understands why Stefan did what he did. It's like, but the fact is, he can't have Stefan turn his humanity back on, because he refuses to, he doesn't ever want to kind of deal with that situation, especially knowing the guilt he have to feel towards Elena when she eventually wakes up. The fact is that he killed Tyler. I mean, I guess there's also that, like, dark, twisted part of aspect of being like, I mean, technically you could have Damon kind of like, when everyone eventually dies, Damon could technically just burn all the books. But I mean, obviously you have Caroline and Stefan still being around, because, by the time Elena wakes up, Bonnie will be dead, because that's how the whole spell works, and Alaric will be gone. So I don't know, it's just a very interesting episode. I'm curious to find out whether there's any validity to what I've kind of thrown out there so far. Like I said, it does seem like they are at odds, but like I said, we don't really get Celine's position on it. Like, it does seem like because she did try to get Georgie to rescue her sister, and it's like, maybe there's some validity to like, hey, like, it's like, how does Georgie feel about it? You know, is she trying to make up with her sister to be like, you know, and, you know, is, at what I said, is that what Sybil's after, or something else entirely? Like, that's the only thing that's kind of running through my mind. It's like, she wants to break free. Because the thing is, currently there's no way to actually kill a siren, so maybe in some way Sybil's, you know, trying to find a way to kill one. I mean, because they seem to be pretty impenetrable. No, not impenetrable. They get hurt, they just don't die. And that was kind of something I meant to cover a little earlier, was the Celine boat thing. I still don't get that. Like, how does she fake that? I mean, maybe she kind of... I mean, the fact of the matter is your injury still maintained. So I'm guessing what she did was have Virginia slit her throat, or she slit it herself to make it realistic. But she knew it wouldn't kill her. All she would have to do is feed. Or maybe she knew that Caroline would save her. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure next episode we'll kind of get more answers to it now that she's been found out. So, very interested to see where that all goes. It is really sad just to think about the fact that Tyler is going, like, because this season is pushing, because there's still a part of me hoping that in some shape or form this is all fake somehow. I don't know, like, that there's some trick to this, that Damon still, like, you know, had some last minute scheme or something like that. I doubt it, but there's that part of me that will always still be holding out to the very end, because as the season is already setting up, it's like, oh, we've already killed off one of the longtime characters. It's like at any point in time, anyone else could drop dead because of all this. Like, it's hard to say. I honestly don't know if Damon or Stefan will survive this. It might be a situation where Damon survives, but Stefan doesn't, or maybe both of them don't. I mean, especially because it's like, especially you have the moment of being like, oh, Stefan and Caroline, that whole thing at the end being like, oh, she's always going to be there to help him, to always save and protect him. It's like I was legitimately halfway expecting someone to come up and stab her in the chest at that moment, just because it's like, once something like that said, you just expect the worst. Hopefully I'm wrong, but it's just, it's, you know, like I said, some series finales are like final seasons are the time where you just start dropping characters left and right type of thing, where it's just kind of like, hey, you know, because like I said, who knows where the Vampire Diaries will really have a good ending. I'm kind of crossing my fingers. Even if it does have like a nice ending, that doesn't mean that things won't still get very bloody and sad and depressing along the way. So I'm also very curious to see what, you know, is there any, like, because it seemed like they were setting Georgie's character up for something. I guess it was mainly for the part of being like, hey, I might be the siren, but I feel like there's more to it than that. Last time we saw her, she was kind of being sucked off to where Cade is, so maybe we'll get to see a little bit more to that. Like, maybe next episode we'll kind of tap into that a little more. Which, speaking of next episode, there won't be one next week. There will be one the week after next, on the December 2nd, so just keep that in mind. So, and now moving on to this week's episode of Van Helsing. So, very interesting episode where we had the group finding their way to a place known as Eden. Everyone's kind of very suspicious, especially Susan, and Vanessa is kind of like, well, she's basically like, well, she had Axel being like, oh, thinking that being trapped behind certain walls would keep you safe. That's like, staying in one place won't keep you safe for long, because eventually those walls will kind of crumble around you. That safe haven you created will fall apart. Interestingly enough, she wasn't wrong, because it literally fell apart immediately this episode, but I'll kind of get to that later. I did appreciate the fact that Tom Cavanaugh was in this episode, and I just thought he was going to be, I was like, oh, okay, so he's going to be a main, like, I didn't think he was going to be a mainstay character or anything like that, but I was like, part of me was hoping, like, because I already saw the preview, so I knew there was already something hinky with the place, but when you hear, like, especially Susan kind of pointed out, I was like, you notice there are a lot of pregnant women here, yet there are no kids. And it's just more and more suspicious. You have Sam, he finds Muhammad's Nirvana shirt, and then he's like, okay, obviously Muhammad's here. He goes looking for him. The dude locks him up in a room. Because basically there's a vampire named Magdalene who works for Julius, because her and Micah made a deal. Every so often he supplies her with blood. She leaves them alone type of situation. But then immediately the question is, where does the blood come from? Because you would assume, like, okay, obviously it comes from other people, but it's like, you don't see other people, you don't see anybody walking around. I mean, maybe it was never really explained, but maybe they just kind of assumed it's like, okay, maybe there are people who just kind of get their veins tapped for blood and whatnot, because it's like, you don't really see people in that, like, hospital ward area, you know, recovering from, like, the amounts of blood. I mean, I guess it's like, when everyone chips in, it doesn't matter. I mean, because no one really said anything outside of that, so, because I was thinking, it's like, oh, you're sacrificing people. I pretty much figured that, like, I thought that's where the blood was coming from, but it's like, no, the blood was coming from everyone else. But apparently there was a side deal in the makings because he was offering the children. Because these guys are actually, the children here are actually the wives and children of resistance fighters. And it kind of wanted to make Eden kind of a safe haven for them. Basically going as far as saying like, oh, let's create the next generation to give birth, you know, to people who might be the ones that kind of end this whole situation, to be the ones that kind of save us all. Which turned out to be a complete horse crap. Because you end up finding out that apparently Magdalene is actually Micah's wife. And then he kind of banished her, but it's like, I mean, because everyone amongst his group, except for like his right-hand lady and probably the guy that Sam killed, which was just kind of, I love how Sam just started choking him without explanation. He could have explained to Muhammad, but, you know, maybe he wasn't reading Muhammad's lips at the time, but more so than anything, he was more focused on strangling the dude, and then he stabs him. And the moment he kind of had that smile across his face and he kind of put up his finger, I was like, okay, so I was like, is this kind of point towards Sam actually being a killer? Because it's like I said, there have been moments where you kind of look at Sam and you're like, there's something there, especially last episode. I mean, he was so busy beating on the vampire with the bat last episode that he turned around and almost swung at Vanessa. I mean, you could always do that just because he didn't know she was behind him, but still, it feels a little hinky. But it sucks because it's like, it was more like a cult because everyone there, because even the girl, I forgot her name, she's the girl that Muhammad got close to and everything. It's like, oh, he got sick from the mushrooms he ate. I was like, but I thought you warned him about which mushrooms not to eat. So I was like, did you poison him? It's like, you're trying to sell Muhammad's blood to the vampires. I was like, no, that wasn't the case. He just legitimately ate one of the bad mushrooms. I guess he wasn't paying attention and she wasn't around to kind of warn him. But I was like, I don't know, it just felt a little hinky there. So I was like, no, they got it wrong. Also, what I love most about this episode, Doc kind of cracked and she kind of told Vanessa somewhat the truth. She was like, oh no, like, I try to stay as long as possible, but Axel just got left behind. I couldn't stay any longer. And then it was like Gorman showed up and everything. And then it clicked and Vanessa said, you left him behind, didn't you? She's like, I had no choice. I love it. It's like, she didn't do it, but to me it felt so good because it was like Vanessa gave her the biggest middle fingers that she could. Because it's like, okay, you know what? You can stay here. You can go off and do whatever you want to. This is goodbye. You're sure as hell not coming with us. Because she sure as hell didn't say anything later. It was like, Muhammad's like, yo, wait, where's Doc? And she didn't really say anything. It's like she could have, but I mean, maybe that's going to be next episode or whatnot. But it's just like, she sucks, dude. It's like, holy crap, you suck so much for that. It's like, you didn't, like, it's like, you're like, oh, I don't want to get bit again, which is ironic considering the end of the episode. She actually went to Magdalene and it's like, please turn me. She's like, warning them that Theo and the others are coming after her and stuff. Like, I'm giving you forewarning. She's like, I'm tired of being human. I was never meant to be back to being a human because she doesn't fit. She hasn't fit for a while. Because there was that moment earlier, like, you see her looking at her arm when she did that C-section for the baby. She's kind of wiping the blood in her arms that's on her arm and she's got it in her hands. Plus there was that moment back at the hospital where she got some blood on her finger and she drank it and she was kind of really into it. So I'm like, I feel like out of anyone, like, she's the one that struggles the most with being back to human. Like, Flesh seems like he was struggling with it because of the nightmares and whatnot, which apparently we learned out something freaky about Flesh too. Apparently something he told Micah in confidence because, like, Micah kind of, you know, made him drink from the proverbial Kool-Aid. And I was like, it's like, oh, like, because to me, I was like, he's having Flesh put his hands up there and then, like, close his eyes. I was thinking it was like, oh, you're going to stab him in the hands or something, smash his hands till you get some information out of him. Because because Micah had originally lied to Magdalene saying, like, oh, Vanessa hadn't come there. It's like, oh, there's a special woman we're looking for, and he hadn't lied about it. I was like, oh, that's why I was kind of like, okay, maybe he's actually a good guy because he's lying about that. But then it's like, he did that for his own. I mean, really, in his sick, twisted way, he's like, I am building a haven for you. It's like, yes, some babies have to die so often. Who cares? It's not that big of a deal. I built this for you. I kept you all safe. You should be thanking me. Didn't go to that extreme, but, you know, basically the thoughts were there. Just basically, you should be thanking me. I've kept you alive this entire time. And then you look at, I mean, which I thought was brutal the moment, like, Flesh killed him. I was like, it's going to be Flesh who does something because he's standing right behind him and everything. And then, like, he stabs him through the neck, like, stabs him through the back of his neck, and the blade comes out. I was like, poor Tom Cavanaugh. All that sucks. I was like, because I was kind of, I mean, granted, you're kind of a bad guy. I mean, plus Flesh was kind of like, Flesh believed in everything he was saying, whatever. It's just kind of like, move forward, because he was like, the whole point that Flesh was talking to him and everything, it was to kind of be like to help him get past all the stuff that's in his head, like basically everything that he did prior to being a vampire and whatnot. So because it seems like being a vampire probably just, it seems like it amplifies just who you already are. So kind of I mean, like, the thing is, you want to give Doc the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she wasn't always like this. Maybe it is. I mean, obviously, we know even before becoming a vampire, she was in that situation. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so ironic. You won't want to save Axel, but now it's like you're begging this lady to turn you into a vampire, which we ended up finding out. Haha, you don't get to have your way, because apparently she can't turn you back. It's like once Vanessa turns someone into a vampire, there's no going back. Because I was wondering. Because, you know, there was a whole dude that was working part of Dimitri's death squad. He was a human. I was like, because I kept wondering about it. It's like, why don't you ever turn, you know, they could easily go back to being a vampire. I was like, in his case, I was like, okay, it makes sense why you'd keep him a human, because it's like he gets through the UV lights and stuff like that, like he did at the hospital, because he was the one that killed Vanessa and got turned to human because of it. But then, and now knowing that, it's like, it makes more sense. The reason why he never got turned back into a vampire is because he couldn't. No matter what happened, he'd be stuck human. So it's something like, even then, it was kind of like, because like I said, even at that time, I just assumed that was the reason, like, because he could get past the UV lights, which maybe that's the case, but also because that, he can't go back to being a human. I guess Dimitri, depending on who the person is, and I guess because he's such a loyal servant, it was like, well, he gets turned back into human, and well, we could still use him. He's very loyal to the cause. So, and like I said, I find it very interesting, because this whole situation is a little bit similar to Rebecca's whole get up about trying to, like, it's talking about, preserving the next generation to fight this fight this and bring back humanity to being top of the food chain, essentially. And it's like you have Rebecca doing, like, kind of a similar thing, trying to give birth to vampires and stuff like that. So apparently, because there was that whole thing about the bell ringing at the beginning of the episode, and the lady's like, oh, see, they brought trouble upon us. So it's like, I guess the bell is supposed to represent the fact that they're going out collecting whatever. Like, it seems like that deal with Magdalene was something specifically only to her. It doesn't seem like anyone else that's involved. Like, I mean, I don't think it's like a large scale operation like Dimitri or Julius, Julius and Dimitri aren't on good terms right now, so whatever, I'm sure situation Magdalene's in, she probably made that decision herself because of just her past connection to Micah. But at the same time, it's like, when you're a vampire, you really don't care about people and stuff like that. I'm just very curious to see what happens with Doc, because it's like, she tried to become a vampire. She's a risk. They can't bring her along. I mean, I doubt Vanessa wants her with them anyway, because it's like, you did that to Axel. I love her points. It's like, Axel kept you. He could have killed you. You begged him to keep you alive. He even fed you his blood for months to keep you alive, and even, got you cured and kept you alive all this time, and that's how you pay him back, by screwing him over. He forgave you about your moment of, I don't want to bash on you, cowardice or whatever. Like I said, I'd be a coward too, but in a situation like that, it's like, like, Axel's there, like, just give him some cover, or like, do something. You could have easily helped him. It's like, you had time to let Axel cross, and then, I mean, like I said, maybe being a vampire kind of brings out the darker side of you. It doesn't, from the little bit we've seen of Doc, it doesn't seem like she was necessarily like that, but maybe that's something we don't know, because it's like the whole situation with Flesh. I mean, because Flesh was originally, as Micah brought up the fact is that Flesh actually dreamed about killing his wife and child before he became a vampire. I mean, he was like Julius's like second in command or whatever, so maybe it does simply amplify what's already there. The darkest parts of you get amplified. So far it seems, because Flesh is staying behind, and so Theo, and even though there's that thing between him and Vanessa and whatnot, and it's kind of, I thought that was kind of interesting. And I also point out the fact is that girl isn't, because last episode I pointed out, I was like, isn't that girl Dylan? And it's like, no, she's not. I think the reason why I was thinking like that, because actually I was confusing her in my head with another actress. I think it's like Sierra Bravo. That actress, I think in my head, I don't know, there was something there, and it's just, honestly, I'm an idiot, and that's legitimately all there is to it. So, because I forgot, like, I even said it in the, last week's episode, I didn't remember what Dylan looked like, because it's been a while. Last time we saw Dylan was in episode 2, but, the fact of the matter is, it's just Vanessa, Susan, Sam, and Mohammed, and it's kind of like, Like I said, I'm still suspicious of Sam, so he's literally the only one left, so it has to be him. Like I said, not unless we find out, because I know Axel's not dead. He's going to come back, and it's like, not unless they find out with Axel, it's like, oh yeah, it was him the entire time. So it's got to be Sam, if not Doc, with this whole, like, deranged, like, I don't want to be human anymore, that there's a part of me that wants to be a vampire again, that she's kind of going a little crazy, because maybe her brain kind of split. Like, when she became human again, like, that was kind of her way of compensating. Her mind split between, like, her vampire mind and her human mind, that basically she kind of blacks out, and then her vampire mind kind of kicks in. So, like I said, but anyway, the thing I was bringing up is the whole Theo and Vanessa thing, like, them kind of making out and everything. I'm surprised they didn't come up with Susan too much about, like, oh yeah, like, because it does make debate the questions, like, what about that? Vanessa kind of chalked it up as, like, oh, we're just friends. That kind of really didn't mean anything. Because I was halfway expecting when they were making out in the woods or whatever, that I would see Susan kind of like, because she even, like, kind of pulled Vanessa away from him earlier, like, okay, nice, yeah, okay, good job, Zorro. So I hope we do get to see Theo in the future. I do like the fact is that he kind of helped Vanessa train a little bit with a sword, and he gave her a sick-ass sword to give her a katana, which is like, yeah, get all badass and everything. He's got some serious moves the way he cut down those pharaohs earlier, so it's like, it's going to be cool seeing her kind of kicking ass with a... I mean, because last time we checked, they kind of ran out of ammo at the beginning of the episode, so it's like, whether they stopped back up or not, I don't know. But like I think I skipped over, but the fact is Flesh is staying behind. Hopefully nothing turns about that. I'm very curious to see what happens with Doc, whether she tries to catch up with the group or not. We will have to wait till next episode to see, but very curious to see how this all plays out. Because most likely they are going to try and track down the Resistance, since this whole thing kind of came up about them. Plus, I'm sure for Muhammad, tracking them down might be the quickest way to find his sister too, so... And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see who Muhammad ends up finding when he finally ends up catching up to her. Because we know, like, she's kind of in servitude to Rebecca now. So it's very interesting. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.